88.1 The Burg, your music central. My name is Nathan. Welcome. I almost said my name is Nathan again, because repetition is the devil's advocate. But my name is Nathan. Welcome to What to Watch Weekends here on Wildcat Preview Day, joined by my reoccurring co-host, Walter. Sir, welcome.
Hey, good morning, everybody.
Good morning indeed. It is a lovely morning here in Ellensburg because it's the springtime, and that's how our weather system seems to work.
Pretty cold.
Yeah, it's still pretty cold. Welcome to weather. So, this morning we are going to be doing some movie reviews because that's what we tend to do on What to Watch Weekends and What to Watch Wednesdays. We talk about movies because it's what to watch. We can't necessarily talk about video games here. It's not what to play, it's what to watch. There's a very consistent theme, Walter. I hope you're picking up on it. So, this morning, we are going to be talking about Western movies. What do you think of Western movies, Walter?
I kind of like them, both ironically and unironically.
That's fair. I think they are one of those genres that's got a handful of bangers, like a handful of the really good movies out there. And then there's a lot of those B-movie kind of low-quality ones, which... any genre is bound to have those at some point. But Westerns might be a little bit more notorious in that aspect. But we're going to be talking about probably the most famous Western trilogy, and then a couple others to add on to that, just for the sake of getting more bang for your buck listening into a longer show. So we're going to talk about A Fistful of Dollars from 1964, For a Few Dollars More from 1965, and The Good, Bad, and the Ugly from 1966, the one that everybody knows about.
Yeah. On
top of that, we'll also jump into Once Upon a Time in the West and Duck You Sucker, which I really like that one. But we can't necessarily run before we start walking. So let's jump into A Fistful of Dollars, 1964, available to watch on Max. So... basic plot summary, it's about the three Rojo brothers and the Baxters, these two families of smugglers who live in this old western town, and No Name, played by Clint Eastwood, makes his way through the town and turns them against each other. Walter, you've seen this movie, right? What did you think of it?
Well, right off the bat, one thing, I remember sitting at home and watching it with my dad, and I remember it being kind of off-putting because it wasn't originally recorded in English.
Right.
It was recorded in, correct me if I'm wrong, but Italian?
That sounds right. Yeah. It was either Italian or Spanish.
I believe it was Italian, but probably wrong.
No, I think you're actually closer to right than you'd believe.
And I remember, it was like a really off-putting voiceover, and their mouth movements did not sync up at all, and I'm like, what's going on?
Yeah.
And I remember Googling in the middle of the movie, and it's like, oh, it wasn't originally recorded in English.
No.
So then once I got over that, it was fine, I guess.
Yeah, no, that is a constant through most of these movies because they were made in Italy. They do tend to kind of weirdly unsync it just because they have to throw in the dubs after the fact. The only ones that seem to really match up are probably Clint Eastwood, who is American.
Yeah.
His voice tends to match up with the lips on screen a bit better just because he's always speaking English in them. I think it's they added his audio in post, but he was still talking English on the set. And they basically just had to re-record it because it didn't sound good because this was the 60s and their sound systems weren't perfect.
Yeah.
But yeah, no, that is a constant thing. I want to tell you right now, Walter, have you heard of a movie called Yojimbo?
I have not. Wait, maybe.
It's a very famous samurai movie.
Okay.
Directed by...
I've probably seen screenshots of it.
Yeah. It's the... If you've ever seen that screenshot of that one samurai looking at a burning building and then looking back, kind of looking all evil, that's the one. If that rings any bells?
I think so.
Okay.
I've probably seen memes of it.
Yeah, I wouldn't be surprised. It's basically one of this classic Japanese samurai movie directed by Akira Kurosawa, which I don't know if you've heard that name before.
I'm not a big anime guy, so...
That's fair, although Akira Kurosawa was actually a lot further before anime became a thing. Although I could see why, because Akira Kurosawa, Akira the anime. Anyways, we're getting a bit off track, so let me connect it back. Akira Kurosawa was a famous director who directed Seven Samurai, one of the most revolutionary movies of all time, and he also directed the movie Yojimbo. Yojimbo is a story of a lone samurai making his way through a town. He meets these two families, and he decides to turn them against each other. Okay. Let me ask you, does that sound familiar at all?
Yeah, sounds kind of like this movie.
It does, doesn't it? Well, funny story there. It is meant to be that way. They are making an unofficial remake of Yojimbo
Instead, it's in the Wild West.
Yeah, exactly. Instead of samurai swords, it has guns, which is funny to me because, like, Yojimbo, there's like a significant scene in which one of the members of the families has a pistol. So it's like they're getting closer and closer. It's not, you can't just say that it's like Yojimbo with guns, because Yojimbo already had guns in it.
Yeah.
So it's literally just Yojimbo set in the West, with Clint Eastwood instead of Toshiro Mifune. But you want to know what the funniest thing about this is? You could easily just make the claim that they're remaking Yojimbo, and people might push back on it. You know who made that claim?
Who?
Akira Kurosawa.
Really?
Yes, and he specifically made a legal claim because he wrote to the director Sergio Leone saying, "Listen, dude, I just saw your movie. It's great, but it's also mine. You straight up ripped me off, and you're gonna have to pay me some money because it's like that's how similar they are."
I've never heard of this before. That seems crazy.
It is crazy, but it's like I had to look into it for a second, and I was like, this is literally on a Fistful of Dollars like Wikipedia page. It's like in the beginning scroll thing. It's like it seems like such a common thing, and yet I've never heard it mentioned in passing or in any videos before. It's just like it is crazy enough that you'd feel like you'd hear about it, right? Like, that's not just me.
Yeah.
Yeah. It's just like, I don't know. So let's see. I honestly don't know how to feel about them ripping off Yojimbo because I'm not like a huge.
Yeah, that's a weird thing to think about.
It's like, what opinion am I supposed to have?
Yeah.
I'm a Western guy, not a Western. I'm an American guy. What do I care?
Yeah.
But it does feel a bit petty because it's like they're significantly different settings. It's just like, are they really the same thing? But at the same time, I know for a fact that if I watch these two back to back, you could easily tell. Like, it becomes kind of obvious when you compare them more directly. So I can't give Akira Kurosawa too much flack for it. Let me also kind of twist your mind around a little bit. So you know how this is part of the Dollars trilogy, right? It goes this movie, A Fistful of Dollars, For a Few Dollars More, and then The Good, Bad, and the Ugly. That's the way they were released. Technically speaking, according to Sergio Leone, this is the last movie in the trilogy. Technically, according to him, which I don't know about that one. I don't know, like, does that confuse you
a little bit? Yeah.
Because, like, here's my problem. Like, I don't see how you could really slice it to be the last one. Because, like, Good, Bad, and the Ugly has, like, the big standoff scene. It's like the most famous Western of all time. Like, it's the most iconic, and they probably knew that they were making the best one out of the series when they were making Good, Bad, and the Ugly.
Yeah. Like,
they knew what they were doing, and it felt like a conclusion rather than like just the beginning of a story. And For a Few Dollars More makes even less sense being like it makes more sense being the second one. It's like,
yeah, I see what you're saying.
It's going to be the second one no matter how you slice it, but I think it makes more sense to come after A Fistful of Dollars because we get introduced to Lee Van Cleef as an actor first, and sure, he's a different character in both movies, but like, it feels like we'd meet the moral version of Lee Van Cleef first before meeting him in Good, Bad, and the Ugly. You know, I think it might be worth it to kind of examine this a little bit further once we get into A Few Dollars More and Good, Bad, and the Ugly. But right off the bat, I just don't see how you could really slice it that way. They feel so disconnected, aside from the fact that they all have the Man with No Name in them.
Right.
But that's just me.
Yeah.
I like. What would you say about that?
I don't know. I know, like, I don't know. If you look at them all, like, in order, a lot of, like, storylines don't really work if you watch them all in order.
No, they don't, and that's the thing that confuses me. It's just like, it feels like they sort of unintentionally made it into a trilogy, which I think they did. I don't think they set off to do that. They just ended up getting quote unquote lazy, I'd call it, by having Clint Eastwood wear the same outfit every single time, which is fine because it's iconic now. But I think it shows the signs of not being intentional from the start, and that leads to issues when you're trying to connect them all in your head. So that's probably the reason.
Yeah.
But yeah, that is A Fistful of Dollars. Before we jump into the next movie in the series, for a few dollars more, we're going to take a quick break with City of the Dead by The Clash. You recommended this, so cool. 88.1 The Burg, your Music Central. Welcome back to What to Watch Weekends. My name is Nathan, and...
My name's Walter. Welcome back, everyone.
Welcome back. So, we are going to be jumping into the second movie in our trilogy, that being For a Few Dollars More from 1965, available to watch on Max. But before we do that, Walter was telling me something during the break about Clint Eastwood specifically.
Yeah, so in Fistful of Dollars, like, I know every single guy that's, like, in my, like, age group, whatever you call it.
Right.
At some point in their life, has used a screenshot from the opening scene of Fistful of Dollars, where it's like they reveal Clint Eastwood's face and he has like the half a cigar in his mouth, and it's like the close up of his head. I know every single guy has used that screenshot as a profile icon for something at some point in their life.
Right. Yeah, it's easy to see why. It's one of those iconic things. It's one of those, like...
It's a very, like, famous scene, for sure.
Yeah, it's kind of like one of those... It's along the lines of people who use this one screenshot of a character from an anime or something like that. It's kind of like that. I've always thought Clint Eastwood looked like an anime character.
Huh.
I don't know if that's
I've
just
never thought
me.
of that.
It depends on which image of him that you're looking at, but I could easily show you a more relevant example. But we are jumping into For a Few Dollars More, which personally, I don't know about you, this is my favorite out of the trilogy. I think Good, Bad, and the Ugly is definitely the best one.
Yeah.
But this one is my favorite. You know, it's like that classic meme of like, this is brilliant, but I like this one.
Yeah.
So this is about Lee Van Cleef, who, when I was reviewing these on Wednesday, What to Watch Wednesday show, I just said Lee Van Cleef's name over and over again, and I was like, I gotta remember what his name, the main name of his character is, because I can't just keep saying Lee Van Cleef's name over and over again. So it is Colonel Douglas Mortimer in this movie.
Wasn't he he played like a sheriff character, or am I remembering something else?
I think you're remembering something else. He was technically like a colonel. And
that makes sense.
Yeah, he's kind of a sheriff, but a little bit more of a kind of loose cannon in terms of the Dollars trilogy, just because he's in these Western movies where there's a lot of moral ambiguity.
Yeah.
So it's like he's not necessarily like a good guy, but he is probably the most upstanding out of all of the characters in these movies. But it's about Douglas Mortimer and No Name, otherwise Man with No Name, teaming up to take down a bandit by the name of El Indio. Now, I should also mention that I tend to call Clint Eastwood's character No Name just because it's a fun nickname.
Yeah.
Man with No Name is just so hard to say over and over again, so it's just like No Name.
Yeah, they never actually gave him a name, so
they tried to a couple times, but it never stuck. Everybody knows him as the Man with No Name.
Man with No Name. Yeah.
That's his name. So I think the reason I like this one the most, aside from some of the story elements, is it's one of those movies where I kind of held off on watching it, and then I went back and watched it, and I was pleasantly surprised and kind of annoyed and kicking myself for not watching it. You know what I mean?
Yeah.
Like you kind of hold off on it because you're like, oh, I don't know if I like it or I'm not in the mood. Then you watch it and you're like, what was I thinking? This is amazing. For me, Fish for a Few Dollars More is even worse than that because it's like I was watching the Dollars trilogy. I watched A Fistful of Dollars and I was like, okay, the next one is For a Few Dollars More, but I don't have access to it on Amazon. I can just skip it, right? I don't need to watch it.
Yeah.
And then I went straight into Good, Bad, and the Ugly. And then after the fact, I was like, maybe I should just block out some time to watch For a Few Dollars More. And I did. And I was so annoyed at myself for not watching it earlier because it was like such a pleasant surprise. I thought it would have been like, no, a skippable one, but it wasn't. It was worth watching. So I was proven significantly wrong.
Yeah, A Few Dollars More has something I'd like to call middle child syndrome.
Right.
Where it's like the middle movie of a trilogy to the point where the first one's really good and the one that came after it is really good. So I actually don't really remember much from this movie.
And that's fine.
Yeah.
I can tell you right now, like I think that's part of the reason why I was so annoyed at myself for not watching it. It's just because it has such a syndrome of like being after like
it's squeezed in between like two good movies.
Yeah,
that you don't really remember it.
Yeah, no, it's like it's squeezed in between an iconic like opening and an iconic ending that the iconic middle is really forgotten.
Yeah.
So let me tell you right now, my thing about this movie. First of all, I like this theme song the most.
Yeah.
It's the one. It's the one you hear the most often, I'd say, when it comes to westerns, which is do 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 do.
Yeah.
You know that one?
Yep.
Yeah, that's from this movie.
It was by Ennio Morricone.
Yes.
He was, I don't know, probably one of the best film score writers
Yes.
of all time.
Like, yes.
Yeah.
You are absolutely right. Ennio Morricone is one of my favorites. Like, iconic, masterful, masterpiece. I'm trying to. What's it called for a person who creates masterpieces? What would you call that?
I don't know. A genius.
Yeah.
I know there's a word for it, but
Master worker, master builder.
I don't know.
Master debater. Anyways, no, he's good at debating. Anyways, so no, why did I say that he's good at debating? He's making music. That's not a debate. Unless you're making it for Western movies where they're kind of in a violent debate.
I don't know.
If you philosophize with me. No. So I think this one has the best sort of overall feel to it. Mostly because the one from The Good, Bad, and the Ugly, I can't take it seriously because I've heard it referenced all the time, and it also has the wah, 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 which...
I recently saw a meme about that where it's like, oh, a human didn't make this. It was actually written by musical gnomes.
The one from Good, Bad, and the Ugly, specifically?
That one. Where it's like, wah, wah, wah.
I'm just imagining these little gnomes making that noise.
Yeah.
Do you think their mouths are the shapes of like a horn or something
I don't
like
know.
that?
And now when I listen to that, I can't think, and I just think about little gnomes.
Oh, that's great.
Yeah.
That's hilarious. For me, my problem is that whenever I hear those noises, I think of like a late night television show where the host makes a bad joke and you just hear wah 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 wah.
Yeah.
I think of that, and I can't take the one from Good, Bad, and the Ugly seriously. This one, I can take it very seriously. From For a Few Dollars More, like that, just it fits to me. It works. It's a very good iteration on the one from Fistful of Dollars into this one right before it jumps into Good, Bad, and the Ugly, where they seem to like kind of iterate on each other just a little bit. This one is like in that perfect sweet spot of like, I can take this iteration seriously. And it's like, it's also just pleasing to listen to, like the way they orchestrate the whistles and stuff like that. It just
It's kind of beautiful if you think about it.
Yeah, it really is. It's a weird kind of, there's a strange sense of beauty in the way it's portrayed, and it's beauty feels like such a weird thing to apply to these dark and gritty westerns with these sort of epic scores, but I think that's a good descriptor. It's a weird one, but I think it fits absolutely. So I don't know if you remember the final scene to this movie.
I don't think so.
That's fine.
Yeah.
That means
I don't remember, even though I just watched it in like December. But...
Yeah, that's fine. So, as I mentioned, it's about Mortimer and No Name going up against El Indio. So, let me tell you about... So, over the course of the story, they're basically chasing down El Indio, and they get to the final showdown. There's a connection between El Indio and Mortimer, Lee Van Cleef's character, and that connection is that El Indio basically violated Mortimer's sister, and then she ended up removing herself from the world. Okay?
Yeah.
So after that, El Indio steals her pocket watch. She has this little pocket watch that plays a little musical tune out of it.
I remember that.
Yeah, and he steals it and he keeps it around as a constant reminder of the evil thing he's done. Now, Mortimer also has a pocket watch, and it has a picture of his sister in it. And it also plays a little musical tune. He carries it around as a reminder and as a sort of driving force throughout the story. And the tune it plays is very significant in the fact that after a quick shootout, Mortimer and El Indio are face to face, and they show down. They have a sort of standoff, and Mortimer pulls his gun.
Yep.
Now, during that scene, there's a part where Mortimer is strolling forward, holding the watch in his hand, and you just hear the little tinks of the musical tune. And that part is burned into my memory, that part of him holding a little watch and just his hand being outstretched like that. Like it just, that image to me just sticks out in my mind. But, and it's also one of my favorite examples of diegetic music, which is a concept in filmmaking where you make music come from something placed in the world. You know, it's like when you hear music out of a radio or out of like a boombox or something like that, or from an orchestra that's specifically in the movie. It just like, it's supposed to blend into the background. That to me is always super cool, and I want to try that kind of thing myself. Now, I just still can't get that shot out of my head of that hand holding that watch. And I couldn't get it out of my head, so I decided to rewatch the scene, you know? Let me tell you something, Walter. I lied to you.
Yeah.
Because I said that Mortimer was the one holding the watch, did I not?
Yeah.
Well...
It was Indio?
No. It was...
No Name.
It was.
Huh.
That part is specifically during, like I said, they have that showdown, but El Indio shoots the gun out of Mortimer's hand and basically comes face to face with him, opens up his watch and goes, "Listen, Mortimer, once the music stops playing, we shoot." And he's basically standing there with Mortimer's gun on the ground. He can't get to it in time. Once the music ends, there's no possible way. And as the music starts to fade out, it comes close to the end, and Mortimer is like, "Oh no, I'm going to lose." And then the tune starts up again, and the camera pulls back, and you see No Name carrying Mortimer's watch that he pickpocketed off of him, and he strolls forward.
Yep.
And he goes, "Here, Mortimer, take my gun. Now we're going to start." And the music swells. The tune plays over it. It just keeps going and going, building up that tension and that amazing emotional response of just seeing these two team up and realizing that, like, here's my favorite thing about this scene is that El Indio straight up had to get Mortimer's gun out of his hand, because when he has an actual gun within reaching distance, it's over. Like, there's no way he's going to win.
Right.
So he had to straight up just disarm the guy to have a fighting chance of beating him in a showdown. And now that he actually has a fighting chance, it's finished for El Indio. Like, it's done. And it very much is done because he immediately wins Mortimer after like a long countdown after the music fades out. And it just boom, boom. I loved that scene so much just because it's so close to the final showdown that would happen in The Good, Bad, and the Ugly, but it has a more emotional component to it. You know, it's not like three villains staring each other down. It's about vengeance,
Right.
which I think is very significant story-wise. You know, it's poetic justice. It's amazing poetic justice, especially the fact of like El Indio couldn't have won if they were evenly matched. He had to like make the playing field easier for him just to win. He was like gonna get it from the start, and it was because of No Name's actual like interference that Mortimer ends up getting the vengeance that he needs. So that to me, that just speaks volumes. I don't know about you, but like, what do you think?
I don't know. I actually don't really remember much about this movie, so.
But then I'll ask you this.
Yeah.
The description of this, like, did I get you with the twist? Did I get you with
like,
like?
I remember the twist. I remember like the kind of twist ending.
Right.
It was really good.
Yeah, you at least remember the concept of it. You just don't remember the exact specifics of it. That's fair. But I'm more so asking, did I manage to convince you at first, and then I sort of
kind of.
Did I deceive you, sir? Did I win with my mind games that are not very complicated?
Yeah.
Good.
You baited me.
Bamboozled.
Yeah.
Bamboozled indeed. Anyways, so that is for a few dollars more. I personally love it just for the ending alone, but the movie itself just it spoke to me of like being that underrated one that I think deserves a shout out. It's kind of like the one that you can say, no, this one's actually pretty good. I'd recommend this one. Don't skip it. You can't skip it. I think if you're gonna watch them, you should definitely watch this at least once. So that is that one. We're gonna take another quick break, and when we come back, we're gonna jump into The Good, the Bad, and the Ugly.
Okay.
88.1 The Burg, your Music Central. Welcome back to What to Watch Weekends with me, Nathan, and
me, Walter.
Me,
Walter.
me, Nathan.
Hey, what's up, everybody?
What's up, everybody? Welcome back. We are going to be jumping into the third movie in our trilogy today, that being The Good, Bad, and the Ugly from 1966, available to watch on Max. So, basic rundown. This is about No Name, who, for some reason in this movie, they call him Blondie.
Yep.
Because he's blonde.
Yeah.
I think they dyed Clint Eastwood's hair.
Yep.
Oh, dear. But he's still called No Name in our hearts forever.
Yeah.
But the man with no name, Lee Van Cleef, who plays the character Angel Eyes instead of Mortimer from the last movie, and Tuco, Eli Wallach, end up going to find gold during the Civil War. And just in case you guys are wondering, that was in fact in the order of the title, that being Clint Eastwood, No Name, Blondie is the good, Lee Van Cleef, Angel Eyes is the bad, and Tuco, Eli Wallach is the ugly. Which I never really understand that kind of idea behind it, because technically speaking, like Blondie, No Name really isn't like a quote unquote good guy. And like in reality, they all are kind of ugly.
Yeah.
And I think the only reason they made Lee Van Cleef's character the bad one is just because he's like, by comparison, the worst one. But
it's one of those movies where it's like the good, bad, the ugly. All of the three main characters are good, bad, and ugly at some point in the movie.
Yeah.
I didn't realize that until fairly recently when I watched a review on YouTube about it.
Right.
And I'm like, I never thought about that.
Right, yeah. It is kind of a funny situation. It's a weird sort of name, but I think it fits the style well enough. I guess they're kind of just going off the law of average, which is on average Clint Eastwood's more good. On average, Lee Van Cleef's is mostly bad. On average, Tuco is ugly.
Yeah.
Which, I mean, he is. But that was, like, and I mean that they intentionally made his character look disgusting.
Yeah.
Like, I'm not saying that he's a bad-looking person. It's just, like, they intentionally did that.
Right.
And they succeeded at it. So, that, to me, it's a significant part of the movie's sort of DNA. But I will also admit, I said this movie takes place during the Civil War, which it does. That wasn't a lie. But for me, weirdly enough, the thing that I didn't like about this movie is when they're in the Civil War. I don't know if you remember that scene.
Yeah, I remember this.
I remember there being, it's like a stretch of about 30 to 40 minutes of them just going through a big battlefield in the middle of the Civil War. And I remember thinking, oh, this could have been interesting, but this is a nearly 3-hour-long movie, and you're wasting my time with a Civil War battle scene.
Yep, I remember that scene. I remember the scene when they got captured, and
Right.
they were like at the like POW camp.
Yeah.
And it was like they could have made it interesting, but it was just them like sitting at a cabin, and it's like, well, I guess we're stuck here. How are we gonna get out?
Yeah, and then like Lee Van Cleef just shows up and he's like, I'm now a commander, guys. You want to get out?
Yeah.
Cool. Cool. And, it's like, and then there was like that bridge fight. Like
The bridge.
it's like
I remember they tried to make it interesting, but it just every time just didn't work.
Yeah, no, it didn't. That's my thing with this movie. It's like it's like in a road trip movie.
Yeah.
If like right before they get to their destination, it's like, okay, we're gonna make it be interesting and well pertaining to the road work and stuff like that. And then right before that, they're just like, hey, here's a meteor that crashed down here. Like, are we gonna drive around it? Are we gonna drive through it? It's like, why is this here, guys? You didn't need to put it there. It's not as blatant as that, though, because it is set during the Civil War. It's meant to fit into the movie. It's not like super blatant, but it has that same sort of, I guess, chemical composure that you would have with an asteroid in a road trip movie, in that it is just another massive roadblock to get us away from the final destination that you kind of clearly threw in there just to make us wait until the very end, you know?
Yeah.
Like, it feels like they could have, they were just like so close to getting to the gold, basically, and getting to that final showdown that, like, why is this here? You're wasting time for the sake of it. It feels like they added it in there just to make the movie 3 hours long.
Yeah.
Which that's never good.
Yeah. Well, one scene I remember specifically from this movie was when Tuco and No Name, they were out, like, they were lost in the desert, and I think they were like, they just escaped from like jail, so they were like chained together. And they were in the middle of the desert, and then off in the distance they see like, oh, here comes people. They're coming to rescue us. Oh, they're like, oh, they're what? Like the good guys.
Right.
But then it turns out, oh, they're actually like the bad guys from the war, and they're painted white because they didn't see them because they was really far away.
Yeah.
This is probably a scene I really like.
Right. I think I know what you're talking about.
They all had like white paint and whatever on their faces and on their uniforms.
That is starting to ring a bell. I remember the faces. I also remember them being lost in the desert, mostly because it was kind of a disgusting scene since their lips are all chapped out and their faces are dried up. But I do kind of remember that. And it is kind of, again, part of the iconography. I'm fine with scenes like that for certain. It builds up the two characters, and it's interesting enough. And it's also got that like trope of like two adversaries are chained together and basically can't move without the other person. Like, that's a good trope for this movie to implement.
Yeah.
And I'm fine with it being there. That's the thing, is that the Civil War scene doesn't do any of that. That, to me, is the biggest annoyance, and I don't know if you'd agree with that wholeheartedly or not.
Yeah.
But, like, it just doesn't feel like it adds anything.
Yeah. There was a reference to something like this in Red Dead Redemption 2, where it's one of my favorite side quests from the game. Where it's like two completely polar opposite characters, Mr. Black and Mr. White. They're chained together and they hate each other.
Yeah. It's again, that kind of scene, like it's why this movie's iconic. It's iconic for a reason. I just like ranting about the Civil War scene because nobody references it. Nobody talks about it. Nobody cares about it. Nobody remembers it. And if they do remember it, they remember being bored like I was.
Yeah.
And I don't know, do you remember being bored?
I remember being bored.
Good.
Yeah, I remember wanting to like skip it.
Yeah. It's just, why is it here? Get it out, please. Didn't need to be 3 hours long.
Yeah. I forget how long that movie is.
Yeah, it is kind of a chore. and especially with Sergio Leone's sort of style, sort of taking his time and building up slowly. That to me as well is the most annoying part of the Civil War scene is it's not slow and boring. It's kind of moving fast if you think about it, because it's like a battle scene, and yet it's still boring. How do you do that? How do you build your style around being slow and methodical, and then you throw in the scene that's actually fast by comparison to your normal stuff, and it still ends up being the most boring part of your movie? That is crazy to me. That is just insane. But I will admit, part of the reason that I go off on the Civil War scene so much is just because, like I said with the road trip analogy, it's just blocking the way before the next big thing.
Yeah.
And with this movie specifically, the next big thing right after that war scene is the famous showdown. You know, it's the three-way standoff.
Yeah.
And when it's something like that, I tend to be a little bit angrier because they knew what they were doing. They knew it was going to be, there's no way they were making that and didn't think it was going to be like probably the most iconic thing ever. They may have not felt that way, but I'm sure Sergio Leone had something in the back of his mind going, this is going to be significant. This is significant what I'm doing here, because he's so slow and methodical that like he had to have intention behind it. He knew what he was trying to do with it, and to just kind of sidestep it really annoyed me. So that's really my biggest qualm.
The ending for this movie, I actually don't really like the ending from this movie. 'Cause
Really?
I don't know, I remember it just kind of like ended.
Right.
Because it's like they go out to like the field, 'cause the whole movie they had like a treasure map where it's like, oh, there's gold here, and they were all fighting over the treasure map.
Right.
And then it got captured during the Civil War scene.
Right.
To the point where the army was like, oh, we're gonna go there and steal all the gold.
Right.
And so they had to get the treasure map back, and then the ending, they get to the place, and then it just kind of like ends.
Yeah. I mean,
I remember the showdown part.
Yeah. Which, I don't know, like, are you saying that part was bad? Or?
No, it was what came after it.
Okay.
There was the showdown, and then it was like, well, we're here.
Okay.
I guess the end, roll credits.
Yeah, okay, that's fair. So, I mean, I should also mention that, like, I could understand that, because after the showdown, they basically kill Lee Van Cleef.
Yeah.
And then a no-name hangs Tuco up on a horse and then just rides off into the sunset as normal.
Yeah.
And he just takes some of the money. And then it's Tuco just going, dang you, how dare you, you stole my money.
Yeah.
I can see where you're coming from there.
Yeah.
I think, let me ask you this at least. Do you think the ending fits?
It works. It's one of those movies where it ends the exact same way it started.
Right.
Because I remember the scene where Tuco gets hung up with a horse.
Yeah.
And that's like exactly the same way the movie opened with.
Yeah.
And there's probably a term for that, but
Full circle, probably.
yeah. I like it when movies do that.
Yeah, yeah. What you're saying is it's like it functions as an ending. You just didn't like it.
Yeah.
Which that's valid, very valid. That kind of thing. There's some movies out there that are like they're so good, but I just don't like them. You know. I can't think of any perfect examples off the top of my head, but it's just like I can understand where you're coming from there. So thank you for that. I will admit, honestly, the final showdown scene though, like you admitted, well, like that's I don't know. Did you like the final showdown?
I mean, it was good. Yeah.
Yeah.
It was really good.
I personally would copy that scene if I could.
That's fair.
But I would if I could, but I can't because in my opinion, you can't really improve on perfection, quote unquote. I think it stands on its own, really. Anything after that it's just gonna feel like a poor man imitator. So I'd rather not try it. You know what I mean?
Yeah.
It's kind of like let it stand as its own thing. It doesn't need to be referenced. It doesn't need to be remade. You can really just have it be its own thing, and be very jealous that Sergio Leone got to it first before you 60 years ago. So I'm fine with that. It bothers me still, but I'm fine with that.
Yeah.
No, yeah. I still think I like for a few dollars more, but I will concede that Good, Bad, and the Ugly is the best one out of the series. Like, hands down. Most iconic, most referenced, most remembered for very good reasons.
Yeah, for sure.
Except for the Civil War scene.
Yeah.
But that's all I really had to say about it.
Yeah.
So,
I'll also say something about the music.
Oh, yeah.
Where it's like, over recent history, the ending theme, what is it? I know the name of the song is called Ecstasy of Gold. You know the one.
Yeah.
But like, it's become like a meme over recent years, and it's been used in like advertising a lot. So now when I hear it, I think of like commercials, and it's like, oh, this holiday season, buy yourself a truck. Yeah.
It's just that, and it's like, buy a truck from GMC Motor.
Yes. And I just think like that's used in advertising so much where it's like lost its original meaning. I don't know.
That's fair.
Buy a truck.
I'm just thinking of that song over that, and I'm thinking of how much of a clash that is.
Then you see like it's a truck driving through the desert.
It's like
big sand clouds.
They tried, but like they didn't. They're just using that song. Okay. No, yeah, that's really funny. Thank you for that, sir.
Yeah.
So we're going to take another quick break. When we come back after the hour, we are going to jump into Once Upon a Time in the West. So are you ready for that?
Yep.
Good. 88.1 The Burg, your Music Central. Welcome back to What to Watch Weekends. After the break, it is now 10 o'clock on the hour, and it's 10:02.
10:02.
Oh, no. I was wrong. Oh, no, the world has...
Lied to us.
But I lied to you. I am sorry. That would probably be like the worst confrontation scene in a movie ever. You know what I mean?
Yeah.
It just wouldn't work. It's like one of those bad B movies.
Yeah.
But anyways, my name is Nathan, and I'm joined by my co-host Walter.
Hi guys.
Hello.
Welcome back.
Welcome back. So, we are going to jump into the last two movies we have to talk about this morning. One of them being, or the first one, excuse me. One of them, it's like, when there's two of them, you can't necessarily say one of them. You got to go like the first one or the second one, and you usually start with the first one, you know. So, first one is Once Upon a Time in the West from 1968. Apparently available to watch on Showtime or something. I
haven't seen this one. So.
That's fine.
Yep.
I'm excited to tell you about it. So, let me kind of give you the general outline of Once Upon a Time in the West. And I should also say beforehand, this is directed by the same guy who made the Dollars trilogy, Fistful of Dollars, For a Few Dollars More, and Good, Bad, and the Ugly. So it's kind of like another Western movie. It's also got music by Ennio Morricone, which we'll get into later. Trust me, you're going to want to hear what he did with this movie. But to give you the basic plot outline, this is about a rail baron, like one of those railway barons that there's always in these Western movies who wants to build a train for some reason. But he wants a plot of land, as they always tend to do. And so he sends out his henchmen to terrorize the family into giving him the land. Instead, the henchman kills all the family, except for the wife, and then basically raises nonsense, and the wife gets away. She manages to escape and ends up coming into town around the same time as a mysterious stranger by the name of Harmonica. They don't necessarily team up, but it's kind of coincidental. It's a lot more of a, like, here's a couple separate storylines running parallel to each other. And so Harmonica is just kind of in the vicinity when she's in town, you know? So, I should admit, like I said, in tandem storylines, those tend to be hard to follow or care about, don't they?
Yeah.
They tend to kind of focus on one more than the other, and you can't necessarily write them perfectly so that all of them balance out unless you're doing kind of a Traffic thing with Steven Soderbergh where you really have to like emphasize which one is a separate storyline. And even then, one of them falls by the wayside eventually. So it's one of those kinds of situations.
Right.
There's just a lot of extraneous stuff, and I don't necessarily remember everything from this movie because of that. I do remember significant portions of it, that's for sure. But there are certain things that just fell by the wayside and I didn't remember them. I will say, like I said, the mysterious stranger harmonica. He's the most important part. He's the part that's kind of focused on the most. And like Colonel, I already forgot his name. What was Douglas, I believe? Mortimer from For a Few Dollars More. Like that, he has more of a character arc in this movie. Harmonica does. He has a revenge storyline, a lot more so. And I also like his character just because he's played by Charles Bronson. I don't know if you've heard of Charles Bronson at all.
Yeah.
He's one of the more iconic Hollywood tough guys, in my opinion. I've loved seeing him, and in this movie, I'm sure you could imagine how well he'd fit into that style. For sure. Like, yeah, he's basically a lot like Clint Eastwood, just like a different flavor of it. Very much a tough guy. So let me also ask you, why do you think he's called harmonica?
Because he plays a harmonica?
Exactly.
Yeah.
And it's also a great excuse for them to throw in more diegetic music, like I was talking about earlier, where they have like music coming from inside the world.
Like harmonica music playing when his character is on screen.
Oh, yeah.
It seems kind of cool.
Oh, yeah. No, it's really cool. Like, he specifically has a harmonica and just kind of plays this do do do. Like, it's this very simple sort of melancholic tune that really sort of reveals everything and nothing about his character. You know, it's like he's this mysterious stranger, but over time you kind of learn the significance of it and of the harmonica. But before we get to that, we have to jump into the villains of this story. One of them more specifically being the henchman that brutally murdered that family who had the plot of land. One of them, the lead henchman, is this crazy psycho, this absolute evil person. And let me get. So this came from the 60s. Could you maybe think of an actor that they would get to play an evil character? If not, it's okay.
I can't think of any.
Okay. Well, let me ask you this. Okay. So you've seen the movie 12 Angry Men, right?
Yeah.
You know the one juror who basically raises his hand and says, "I think he's not guilty," and that sets off the entire course of the movie, right? You remember who plays him?
I don't.
He's played by actor by the name of Henry Fonda. This incredibly popular. He was like a He was like a token good guy. He's the token like stand-up guy. You know. So why am I bringing up 12 Angry Men? Well, this absolute psycho henchman from Once Upon a Time in the West is played by Henry Fonda from 12 Angry Men. This actor who's known for playing these morally upstanding characters, this hero, basically, has now been transformed into an absolute psychotic madman. And it's an amazing idea that they didn't mess up at all. Like, I'm not even saying that sarcastically. They did not mess this up. They thought about it from the beginning. Sergio Leone was like, what if we messed around with American audiences and had it be like, this guy straight up just kills an entire family, and then we show the camera pan up and they go, "Oh no, it's Henry Fonda." Like, can you imagine that reaction in the theater? It's like, that guy is always the good guy. Why is he the bad guy? Like, that to me, that's dedication. That's interesting. That's significant.
I know another actor like that you could kind of make the argument for would be John Wayne. John Wayne is like always seen as like a good guy cowboy character,
quote unquote. He's more the rebel, and in Stagecoach he was like the villain, objectively. But I can see where you're coming from here. Like I'm kind of picking up what you're putting down. Continue
there's a lot of like other Western movies where it's like they use characters like that, and then they totally like shift their like form to they're the totally opposite than what they're like normally seen on screen playing. Right.
You're saying it's kind of like it's normal for Western.
I know you know what I'm talking about, but I don't know how to like.
Yeah, no. I guess what you're saying is it's part of the makeup of the Western genre. Yeah, like it's kind of a trademark of it. Is that what you're saying?
Yeah.
Okay, so I'm definitely picking up what you're putting down, and I absolutely agree, especially just because of Henry Fonda's casting. Like they know what they're doing and they have an idea behind it. I will say as well that this movie is enhanced by its music. As I was saying earlier about Ennio Morricone's. Let me give you a couple of guesses. What do you think could really improve Ennio Morricone's already genius level of making music? Like, could you think of like a specific instrument that they could give him?
I don't know.
Synthesizer.
Synthesizer. I feel like that would go hard.
That's a good guess. And
Yeah.
I think it would go hard. But instead of giving him a synthesizer, they gave him a heavy metal guitar for this way. And
sounds crazy.
It is. There's like at the beginning scene when Henry Fonda shows up and kills the family. It's like this kind of plotting music, and then this like little kid comes out and just sees this evil man, and you just hear this. It's like it fit. I'm not gonna do a good job of recreating that for you, but I will tell you, and I'm sure you can imagine, just Ennio Morricone shredding on that guitar just to blend in, and it like blends so well with the Western music.
Yeah, that sounds crazy. Yeah.
It's awesome. Like, it fits so well that I was so convinced that it would have been better than Good, Bad, and the Ugly. But, like, it probably isn't. It's not as iconic, but, like, it just sounds so good. It just sounds like the perfect progression. You know what I'm saying? Like, it fits. It just works.
Wow.
But, yeah, no. I don't know how you can top. I didn't know how you could top Good, Bad, and the Ugly, and then you topped it. You topped it immediately. I will say that I would, unlike the standoff scene where you just can't take inspiration from it without copying it, I'm going to unashamedly copy the metal guitar from Western movies. That'd be awesome. Can you imagine it? Like, you get a power metal group to make a Western movie soundtrack.
Yeah, that would be insane.
It would. I feel like it'd work better than it should, and I'd love to see it be in motion. So I'm going to steal that idea, Ennio Morricone. I'm sorry. Steal, quote unquote. So I will say the surface level story with the Rail Baron and all that, it's kind of an overplayed thing. It's you've heard that storyline before, but I will say, the storyline surrounding harmonica is actually interesting. It has an arc to it. Throughout the movie, harmonica plays his little harmonica, and you see him having flashbacks to this figure in the distance. It's blurred out. You can't see the figure's face. You have no idea what's going on. And this happens like at least 2 times before the final reveal at the end, where harmonica is facing down Henry Fonda's character, this evil man. And they play the scene again, and coming into focus is Henry Fonda. And he basically comes up to Charles Bronson, harmonica, and goes, "Keep your ever-loving brother happy." And he basically gives him a harmonica, and it's revealed that Henry Fonda killed harmonica's brother, gave him the harmonica, and basically left him for dead. And harmonica's been tracking him down ever since to get his revenge.
Okay.
Which, again, it's a lot like Lee Van Cleef's character in For a Few Dollars More, just with this, again, heavy metal music and a harmonica over it. And it's like they build up the reveal a lot better. I liked that so much. I loved that, and it took on such a different meaning after that reveal that it just it made it all worth the kind of cliched storyline and some of the stuff that I just was not bothered to follow along with. Like there's the scene where that wife from the family that gets killed at the beginning, she and Henry Fonda end up in relations with each other. And that scene, I just had to skip over it. I was so annoyed and uncomfortable watching it, just because Henry Fonda's character was just such a detestable piece of garbage.
I could see that.
It just didn't work. I'm not ashamed to admit that I skipped through that scene.
Yeah,
it's kind
of gross.
Yeah, it's very gross. I had to skip through it. Otherwise, I wouldn't get through the movie. And I almost didn't get through this movie because I started watching it for the first 30 minutes, and then I got bored and turned it off. And then I came back later, and I was like, I'll give it another shot. And so I got through it, and then I got to the harmonica reveal, and I was like, okay, this is worth watching for this reveal alone. And I would still recommend watching it, even though you haven't seen it.
Yeah.
I'd still recommend it to you. I don't know if I've made that clear.
Yeah, that sounds like something I'd watch.
Fair enough. I basically, I like it. I think it stands the test of time. And it's definitely not the underrated one. Well, okay, not the overrated one. That's what I meant to say. It's definitely the underrated one, to be honest with you. Everyone knows the good, bad, and the ugly. Nobody talks about Once Upon a Time in the West. Talk about Once Upon a Time in the West more often, please. Anyway, so that's Once Upon a Time. We're going to take another quick break, and we're going to jump into Duck You Sucker after the fact. But it might have made more sense to play it earlier, but we're playing it now, so that's the important part. With this being about Western movies, you got to kind of play this song called Clint Eastwood by Gorillaz.
Yeah.
You're kind of legally contracted to do that. So we'll be back after this break. 88.1 The Burg, your Music Central. My name is Nathan. Welcome back to What to Watch Weekends. Welcome back, Walter, sir.
Hey, what's up, everybody?
What's up, indeed. We are going to jump into the last movie we're talking about this morning, that being the movie, it's technically called Once Upon a Time in the Revolution, technically speaking, but it's known more frequently by the funnier title of Duck You Sucker.
Yeah.
Which I love that title. From 1971, available to watch on Amazon and Tubi. So this one, basic plot line, it's about the Mexican Revolution from the early 1900s. It follows a couple bandits who get caught up in the revolution after they blow up a bank and decide to rob it, you know?
Yeah.
That classic storyline. I'll give it props for uniqueness. At least it's not like about a railway baron trying to steal a plot of land like every single Western movie is. It's got again that sort of historical connotation, like Good, Bad, and the Ugly, that kind of makes it have a different texture to it.
Yeah. Two bad guys.
Yeah, too bad. They get involved in the revolution like accidentally.
Yeah.
And they're just like, oh, we're heroes now? Okay.
I don't know of any other movies like that.
Yeah. Wait.
Yeah, I don't know of any other movies like that.
You're being sarcastic.
Yeah, I am.
Okay. That's fair.
Yeah.
It's like the Grinch. No. So there are two characters in this story, that being Juan Miranda, who's played by Ron Steiger, which I don't have anything against him because I don't really know much about him, and John H. Mallory, played by James Coburn. Have you heard that name before?
Probably, yeah.
I'll give you this. James Coburn played Mr. Waternoose in Monsters Incorporated.
Oh, okay.
It's that actor.
That guy.
Yeah, he's another one of those old school Hollywood tough guys, but he
Yeah.
ended up playing Mr. Waternoose, so it's fine.
Yeah.
So I like it because the actor who plays Mr. Waternoose is in a Western, and
Okay.
Mr. Waternoose has the word noose in his name, and there's always a noose in these Western movies, right?
Yeah.
You know what I mean?
Yeah.
It's a very bad joke, and I think it's not funny at all. But funny laugh. I'm sorry. I kind of like. I just like that parallel. It's kind of a goofy one if you think about it too much, which I tend to do that, so it's fine. I like overthinking and making bad jokes out of overthinking. So, I don't remember this movie's plot or storyline perfectly. It's been a little while, but I do remember that Juan Miranda, played by Ron Steiger, he has a good character to him. I think if I remember correctly, he has like a family, and that's part of the reason that he's a bandit. He kind of robs stuff with his family, with his kids and stuff like that, and he's kind of foraging for money. So it gives him more of a motivation,
Right.
you know? So he's at least got some depth to him. And the two of them meeting up and kind of being adversaries is the driving force of the movie. They end up teaming up to rob a bank and then end up getting caught up in the revolution and then end up sort of friends by the end of it. And so it's like kind of the main part that you're following along with.
Right.
I mainly remember this movie because of John H. Mallory, which is James Coburn, Mr. Waternoose.
Yeah.
I mainly remember him because he says duck you sucker. See, his thing is that he's a demolitions expert, and he has sticks of TNT on him, and he tends to throw them at stuff and blow things up. That's why they're part of the revolution, because they blew up a bank. And obviously James Coburn gets involved because he knows how to use TNT. It's like all those Western things. You've got one of those, what's it called? What's a dynamiter? That's not the right term.
Demolitions guy?
Yeah,
I don't know.
Demolition guy.
Demolition guy.
Demolition guy.
Sounds like a movie on its own.
Demo guy. Demo man. So he's the demolitions expert, and every time he throws a stick of TNT, he says, "Duck, you sucker," in a very much a Western accent. You know, it's one of those catchphrases. I will admit that I have been in a car with my friends and I just say, "Duck, you sucker," as we drive really fast, or like just saying it in random conversation for no reason at all. Nobody ever picks up on it, but I think it's funny, so I do it anyway.
Yeah.
And I think it's a funny little thing to say. I will admit there's not too much to say about Duck You Sucker. It's still Sergio Leone. It's still the same guy who did the Dollars trilogy and Once Upon a Time in the West. It's just another one of those westerns. It's not disposable, and I think it definitely holds its own against maybe some of the more lesser quality B movies of the western genre, but it's nothing to fully write home about. But I would like to actually ask you, Walter. You've been kind of saying in between the breaks that you've watched a lot of other Western movies.
Yes.
And I kind of wanted to give you some time to talk about some of those.
Okay.
Because
yeah,
these are the good ones.
Yeah.
Let's hear some of the bad ones.
Bad ones. So a project I did over Christmas this year was I made myself I called it a spaghetti Western advent calendar.
Right.
Where I don't want to get into specifics, but I just took like the 50 top Western films off of IMDb. I assigned each one a number between 1 and 50.
Right.
And I used a random number generator. And every morning I would randomly generate a number, and I'd watch that number corresponding to that movie.
Right.
And so every day leading up to Christmas this year, I watched a different Western movie. And a lot of them are just bad.
Right.
They're just bad. A couple of them specifically that I remember, it was recorded in, I can't remember the name of the movie. The name of the movie was like an onomatopoeia, much like Duck You Sucker.
Right.
Where the movie in English, the title roughly translates to bang.
Right.
But in English, the word literally means like shoot. And it was like, I don't really remember much because I remember just laughing at this movie a lot because it was about like this little town being overrun by alligators.
What?
Yeah, and it was like about them having to shoot alligators.
What?
Yeah, and I remember like, since obviously I don't remember the specifics of who the actors were or whoever.
Right.
But English obviously wasn't these people's first language.
Right.
So the grammar was just really funny.
Right.
And it was just about them shooting alligators.
The entire time.
Yeah.
Okay.
And I was like, oh, we're trying to build this city by a river, but people keep going missing. Alligators. Yeah.
I wouldn't blame you for not remembering the plot of the thing.
I don't remember that, but I remember like the plot was like they had to kill all the alligators.
That's awesome.
Yeah, and there's other ones that are just like nothing really happens the entire movie, and it's like people standing around and talking, and then it's like at the end of the movie it'll be like, well, the bad guy's gone. And it's like, yeah.
Cool.
A lot of them are just like that, but instead the characters are all just named different.
Right. Yeah, I could see that.
I don't know. Here's an idea for one of those like AI generator, like AI Family Guy things, but AI Western movie.
Yeah, it's just them standing around holding guns and then talking and then moving on.
Yeah.
I mean, are there any other standout ones besides the one with the alligators?
I don't know. you'd say I remember watching the No Name trilogy.
Right.
I remember the Django movies.
Ooh, yeah.
Those ones are pretty good. I remember this one called Boss. Well,
Hmm.
that one was pretty good.
What's
So it was about this guy he was a captured slave, and then he becomes the sheriff, and then he becomes like the president, and then it's like I'm the boss. Yeah,
it sounds a little bit like Blazing Saddles.
a little bit, yeah.
Okay.
Probably Blazing Saddles took some inspiration.
Right,
from this.
right. Yeah, I wouldn't be surprised just from that description alone.
There was a whole lot. A lot of them just kind of blend together.
Fair
because
enough.
you can probably like cut them up and be like, oh, each of these scenes are from 40 different movies, but they all look the same.
Yeah, you could like show two scenes from two different movies and be like, they're from the same movie, and you could easily just trick someone that way.
Yeah.
And then they realize, wait, what do you mean? It's what? Hey, you tricked me! How dare you? You lied. So thank you for that. All that sounds crazy, and now I want to do something very similar with samurai movies. But I want to kind of close out this morning by talking about something to keep in mind with Sergio Leone movies, which is the Dollars trilogy, Once Upon a Time in the West, and Duck You Sucker. That's actually a really interesting point that you bring up, where they blend together a little bit, because I think these movies that we've talked about today, they do start to blend together just a little bit.
Yeah.
They can blend together pretty easily, especially the No Name trilogy, since they all have Clint Eastwood in them. They all tend to feature very similar ideas of of moral ambiguity and long, slow shots.
I was talking to my dad about this, and he said you can say something about the psychology behind it, because I was a city slicker who grew up in Washington, which is nowhere close to Arizona or wherever the deserts are.
Right.
And I've stuff like that, and how if I lived in where there would be instead of trees we had saguaro cactuses, I would probably have a totally different opinion on that.
Right. Yeah, no, that's fair. I think my opinion is that they tend to blend together a little bit.
Yeah.
But they have enough distinction in between them. For example, I think they all have something. They have something each to offer. Fistful of Dollars is a remake of a samurai movie. It's a lot like The Magnificent Seven, that was a remake of Seven Samurai. That's a common thing. Few Dollars More is a tale of vengeance. It's more of a story about him acting on behalf of his dead sister, but that's the difference between revenge and vengeance. Good, Bad, and the Ugly is about a group of mongrels fighting for gold. Mongrels, I like to use that term, but it's really just about these villains fighting each other. Once Upon a Time is a relevant... It's a revenge story that has a different take than Few Dollars More. It's a lot more involved with the character's actual past, rather than by proxy his sister or something like that. It's more personal for him. And Duck You Sucker is the one where they use catchphrases. It's great.
Yeah.
I think the biggest takeaway is that Western movies, I would recommend watching these 5 wholeheartedly, just to get the general idea of what Western movies can be like, because there's a lot of good and there's a lot of bad out there.
Yeah.
But objectively speaking, Dollars trilogy and these 2 on top of it, I think they stand the test of time. They're still fun to watch today, and you can still be surprised by them.
Yep.
So, yeah. Most normal conclusion to a What to Watch Weekends, rather than us just randomly ending it,
Yeah.
But that's what it's like around here. So, thank you all for listening in. I run What to Watch Wednesdays here on the Burg on Wednesdays from 8 to 9 p.m. And I run What to Watch Weekends, usually here with Walter, although you won't be here next week.
No.
but I usually run it here with Walter. Saturdays from 9 to 11 a.m. You can follow us on Instagram at What to Watch Wednesdays, all one word, no caps, no spaces. And that's basically all we got. Do you have anything else you want to close out with?
That's about it.
Cool. Well, thank you all for listening in, and we'll see you all next time.
And I'll see you.